Yeah, Overlord. Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L and now let's talk some Overlord, episode 6. Guys, it's the start of a new arc. I'm excited. A lot of the other viewers are excited. This is gonna be great, man. Great stuff is coming with Overlord episode 6. Alright, so let me just collect my thoughts. Gotta figure out how I wanna approach this because with the episode, on a technical level, there's a few things we can talk about because it's pretty much the start of a new arc. So with the start of a new arc, there's always going to be more heavy-handed dialogue. There's going to be more exposition happening depending on what kind of show you're going into. Like usually the Shonen Jump shows like My Hero Academia, they have more slow starts to their new arcs. Light novels, however, their starts tend to be really breakneck just because, well, they have more things usually that they have to deal with when it comes to the adaptation. And because of that, we have an episode like this one that has two very distinct halves. One half which is just, honestly, just Sebas is just a great man, that half. And then the second half, which is arguably just giant exposition establishing who's going to be involved, which players should we remember as viewers, should we which characters are important, which characters can we expect to see more of, and what exactly is going to be the overall plot, or what sides are getting involved, right? So you have those two very distinct halves, and so it makes for an interesting episode. The episode has two very distinct feelings, and this is just on a note of adaptation. It's really interesting because now this is the spot where I started reading the novel from. So in the novel, you know, when you're reading things out, you also have to deal with more of the character's inner thoughts. And because of the inner thoughts for this particular scene, like if you imagine, or if you see what's going on with Sebas in that first bit, you can imagine that he had a lot more inner monologues, and just the thought process as the characters are going through it and ruminating about it, like the extra little detail that you get by the virtue of a light novel adaptation, or sorry, by the virtue of the light novel literature itself, it makes everything feel more impactful. So when you're going over into the anime episode, the anime does feel like it has a really brisk pace, which is really good for the purposes of an anime episode, because then it just makes for, well, it kind of bolsters the chances that this is going to be entertaining for the majority of people, and that is, at the end of the day, one of the high priorities, right? So the biggest thing that I would question, and even this is just a question for the sake of argument or just for the sake of discussion, is because we have two very distinct halves, which half would you have rather have seen first? This is just now a discussion point. With this episode, Sebas's arc or little bit is way more emotional, right? It's way more emotional. I think it would have been nice to end the episode off on that really strong note instead of the ominous note. But that's just personal preference. So if you feel just mentioning it in the comments, which one would you have preferred to see first? The extreme setup and exposition, which gives more background to what Sebas is ultimately doing when he takes away Tuare, or do you like it the way it is? Do you think it's just good enough? You don't really care, it got the point across? This is just a discussion point if you want to put it down there. But yeah, this is one of the more interesting things that you can talk about when it comes to light novel adaptations, is specifically the order of the order at which things are adapted. So, I think it's a nice discussion point. Anyway, let's get into the episode, because the episode does have some pretty cool things to talk about. And one thing that I'm really happy about is that with the Lizard Man arc and then this arc, there is a bit of an underlying theme of individuality as it comes to the Guardians. The last arc was Cocytus's, his individuality. In that instance, you had a case where Cocytus, his individuality wasn't pronounced enough. In this case, you have Sebas, and when you look at the dialogues that he's having for his half, you could really say, well, this might be a case of there being too much individuality, because in this one, he's disregarding Ainz. He's making moves by his own right, by his own volition. So it's an interesting comparison. I don't know if that's what the author was going for, but there is an interesting contrast, and there will be one character who's going to make that contrast way more pronounced. We'll talk about it when that character and Sebas come into conflict, but it's one of the characters that was, I guess you could say, a helping hand to Cocytus in the previous arc. His behavior is what's going to solidify that this is a heavy contrast across these two volumes. Now, I think, whether it be coincidental or not, I think it's great that the anime is covering these 2 volumes, because this is one of those nice instances where you're going to have a coherent theme of individuality in a season. Like, you don't usually get to have a coherent theme across an a light novel adaptation when it comes to the season breakdown. So this is a really novel thing to have, and it's definitely giving more points to Overlord. Like, this is going to be the season that's going to be talking about the growth of the Guardians. All right, so let's just go very quickly through that very first bit. It's about Tuare and Sebas. Like, just flat out, you know, this is the best. All right, I really like this. This is a shipping based channel. There's a lot of shipping content on the channel when it came to My Hero Academia. I really enjoy this aspect of the characters. I really enjoy this aspect of the story. I like seeing how the characters interact with other characters, and Sebas gives you a lot of interaction here. Like, he's going through a lot. So, like, on the first surface level, of course, yes, this is very heartwarming. He's helping a girl who has had a tough life. That's cool, man. It's inspiring when you see it. And then even through Suarez, her little segment towards the end when she's getting food, when she's been healed up and all that kind of stuff, and her line delivery of, why didn't anyone help her before this? Because now the kindness of someone helping her now, it's just like, you know, that's not really what you would expect in more idealistic settings, right? In a more idealistic setting, you would have had the girl saying that she's so happy to be saved. In this situation, she's specifically regretting that no one helped her before, because this is so nice. It's different when the person is still so stuck in the past that they can't believe people let her suffer for as long as she did. That's a much sadder outlook, because it's not looking to the future. It's not appreciating where they are now. It's still looking at the past with regret. That's an interesting outlook to have. It's novel when it comes to the wide array of people who struggle and have troubles like this. And when it comes to seeing an anime, I'm gonna appreciate it. And for that scene in particular, that was a heartbreaking line. I don't recall that line from the novel. I think I was swept up by other feelings. But having it here, that one, it was kind of off-putting, but I think that was just kind of the feeling that it was trying to deliver. I really enjoyed it. I had a few notes here, like I just want to try and organize this properly. Let's finish talking about Tuare. She's a cute girl, whatever, not the point. The point here is like how horribly she was beaten. So what I want to draw attention to is that she had syphilis, she had a few other diseases, she was addicted to a drug. This is pretty much the worst of the worst when you hear about fictional depictions of whorehouses or prostitutes. This is how they do it. They break down these girls, and as you see, she got abused. Now, the one that I really want to draw your attention to is that she had her tendons torn. She cannot run away. That's effectively what happens when you get your tendons torn. You can't run away, you can't move your body that well. I thought that part was just, man, rubbing the extra little bit of salt to just cement how bad this was for this poor child. Anyway, Tuare is in a safe place for now. She's with Sebas, and Sebas is helping her. Moving into Sebas, however, there's a few more details going on here, and of course, the biggest thing is that he is acting on his own accord, and we have Solution there, who is playing like a slightly antagonistic role. Like, she's saying very scary things, and she's being the one that's very faithful to Ainz. We could probably assume that this is going to become a problem later on for Sebas. She's an antagonistic force right now because he's doing something that's out of the ordinary or out of the scope of whatever he's set there to do. Now, with Sebas, we have that extra little bit where it's touch me, Lord touch me, the Supreme One, touch me. He had a motto, and that motto has now been passed on to Sebas, and we have Sebas questioning whether or not it's a curse. He's acknowledging that that's a trait that he felt from his creator, and now it's opening up the question of why does he feel compelled to do this? So this is one of the more interesting aspects here, because now it's not just about the character description. Now you have to start wondering if these characters have an imprint from their creators. And so this becomes a subtle thing, but in the context of Sebas in particular, it creates a scenario where there's effectively a personality trait that doesn't mesh with the rest of the character description. And I want to see the anomalies that pop up from that personality trait being there. Remember, this isn't one coming from the character description, most likely. This is one coming from an imprint of the creator. And so I want to see how these behavioral traits manifest in the characters. I want to see if the author will ever take it into a direction where he starts to explore the, how would you say this, the contradictions in the characters, or the gray spaces in the character. You think of a character like Albedo, and we know that she got modified at the last minute by Ainz before the world became real. You know, like a last minute modification like that, what kind of implications does it have for the character that's having life breathed into them? I want to see that. And especially in the case of the imprints from your creators, because we know that the Great Tomb of Nazarick and its inhabitants, the majority of them lean towards evil. Seeing how positive messages like never abandon your friends, or if there's someone who needs help, of course, protect them. I want to see how those messages, if the characters will ever have self-awareness, like these messages are not evil, they're very good messages. Or is it going to be something where they just see their friends, their close acquaintances, as an exception to whatever rules that they apply to the rest of the world? There would be that level of hypocrisy there. People have pointed it out in the comments down below. Again, it's just an interesting thing. I want to see how these nuances pop up in the characters. But with Sebas right now, we have him questioning whether or not this trait that he has inherited is a curse. And one thing for sure is that I would love to see Sebas tell Ainz what he felt, or what he was compelled to do at that moment. If he told Ainz, you know, I just remember what Lord Touch Me said about, you know, protecting people, I'm sure Ainz would just give him a big pat on the back and just be like, yeah, all right, yeah, I'm into it, yeah. You know, it's that kind of thing. I would love to see a scenario like that happen, but the Guardians are all so terrified of Ainz in general that them speaking up like that, you wouldn't get it unless Ainz has gone through the ringer to train them to get to that point. Anyway, the Sebas part, strong, I enjoy it. And you know what? Ever since I read the light novel for this arc of the Overlord, for this Overlord arc, I've wanted to do a light novel comparison with, there was the anime, How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, or like Meet Girls in a Dungeon or whatever, Dungeon Girl. Dungeon Girl covered a similar kind of storyline that involved a prostitute, and it's very interesting to see how they deviated when it came to saving the prostitute in question. So once we get through these episodes, I'm going to make that literature analysis and just point out the differences and which one I think ultimately did it better. It's very rare you get these kind of situations, so I'm going to try and make it happen. Anyway, let's just go towards the last end of the episode. Last end of the episode, we're getting every other character that's going to be involved, with an exception of about 4 characters. And the notes I have here are pretty much, we see Brain, that's cool. We see Gazef, and yeah, that's cool. Like, they're just having their thing. They're having a little flashback about Shaltir. And we also have the team of women just going in and burning up a drug field, and they're the one giving us the exposition. This is where it's heavy-handed. You can see with the way they talk, ooh, we gotta burn the diabolical drug, we gotta get rid of it, it's not good for the kingdom, man. You got 8 fingers going on in there, and then the 8 fingers are tied back to the beginning because they were premised at the beginning with the guy that Sebas effectively bought Tuare from. So, you know, you have that connection there. It tells us, we go to Coco Doll at the end of the episode, and he's like, you know, I gotta go take care of this one girl that might sink my whole establishment, gotta like tie up that loose end. And it's like, all right, well, now we know who's gonna be in conflict with Sebas, so that's his personal conflicts right there. That's how he's gonna be dragged into this bigger plot of versus the 8 fingers. So that whole last half is just, okay, this is the stage. Let's see what's going to happen. We have the players. We have the motivations. Cool. And then, you know, before that, of course, you also had Brain and Gazef, and there was the whole existential crisis. And this is a bigger problem that's dealing with how do you reconcile reality and surviving against monsters that you have no right surviving against. So a lot of stuff in the first half that I think is amazing. Second half is just things that have to happen. And all I can say is that I'm really excited for this arc. I'm excited to see Sebas. I'm excited to see Tuare. I'm excited to see how things go. There's a lot of cool things in the air. Let me see if I have any more notes. Oh, we saw Hilma in this episode. I'm excited to see more of her. It's going to be hilarious. And yeah, great episode of Overlord. I loved it. Man, I feel like maybe the second half is the weakest part, but like the first half, yeah, man, 5 stars. Awesome. Totally into it. Yeah, any other little note? At the beginning when Sebas was reading that scroll, that monocle he puts on allows him to comprehend languages. That's the only thing, because I don't think it got addressed in any episode. So we have that there. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Overlord, episode 6. Awesome. Well, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. Freaking awesome, man.